everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Happy New Year. We are just going to do a really quick December wrap-up to finish out my wrap-ups for 2023 before diving into the rest of my end of year content and all of that. So let's talk about December. I read 5 things in December. I spent most of the month reading 2 books and then right at the end of the month kind of squeezed in a couple of other things. But what I spent most of the month reading were the first 2 books in the First Sister trilogy. So the first one being The First Sister and the second book is The Second Rebel. These are by Lyndon A. Lewis, and I am so glad that I got to these in 2023. The First Sister was on my list of top 10 books to get to in 2023, and I'd kind of resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going to get to it because for most of the year I just really wasn't in the mood to read sci-fi, and then right at the end of the year, like at the end of November, I suddenly got this burst of inspiration to read sci-fi, so I picked up First Sister, and I'm just so glad that I did, because I also, not only did I get to check it off my list for top 10 reads for the year, but I also loved it. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about what this book is about. In this, we are following multiple perspectives. We have 2 main perspectives, and then there's kind of like an epistolary perspective in the form of these voice messages that someone has left for one of the other characters. And we are following characters on both sides of this like centuries long war. On one side are the Ikari, who are extremely technologically advanced. They have all kinds of technology that they use in many different ways, but including things like gene editing that they can do both for like practical health reasons and also just for cosmetic reasons. They also have neural implants that allow people to connect kind of mind to mind. The character that we're following on this side of the war is named Leto. He is one of the duelists, which are these kind of elite warriors who fight in pairs, and they have neural implants that connect them to their partner so that the duelist pairs are able to fight as like one unit. Leto has been, at the beginning of the book, Leto has been separated from his partner who he has not seen in a very long time, and he is also kind of being punished for something that happened before the book began. But he is then called in to get a new assignment, and this assignment is yet another punishment and also kind of a test of loyalty, because the new assignment is to hunt down and kill his old partner, who has now gone rogue and joined a rebel force. The other perspective that we are following is on the other side of the war, which are the genes, and they are much less technologically advanced. They also have this religion that is very integral to their society, and part of that religion specifically prohibits using technology to change humans. They are very focused on humans kind of staying like natural to how they are, so they don't use gene editing, they don't use neural implants, all of that. The main part of this religion, though, is the sisterhood, and the sisterhood are these women who are not only not allowed to speak, but their voices are actually removed. They're not able to speak. They are also not able to write. They cannot communicate in any way, and they live on ships essentially to unburden the soldiers so that soldiers can go into battle completely unburdened, and that can take the form of, you know, listening to their confessions and praying for them, and it can also mean unburdening them from their own lust. So they are kind of these forced sex workers who, while the sisters have this kind of weird position in which they have this status from being a part of this religion, they have no real power or agency because the religion prohibits them from saying no or having any real control. They are truly completely at the whim of any soldier on the ship that they serve, with the kind of exception of the First Sister, because the first sister only serves the captain of the ship. So she has a degree of protection, at least. So the other main character that we're following is the first sister on the ship that she is on. However, at the beginning of the book, the captain that she has been serving is retiring. He leaves, and a new captain who's kind of an unknown joins the ship, and the first sister is trying to kind of scramble to maintain her status as first sister because it is such a coveted position. But then she's also asked to spy on this new captain. And as she is getting to know this new captain, she also starts to form more of a connection than she expected with them. And this captain is kind of really like an unknown to her. Like they are, she really can't quite figure out what it is that they want. So that's the other perspective that we're following. And then, as I said, there is this kind of voice message, like epistolary perspective that is from Leto's old partner, so that we get a little bit, like in bits and pieces, we get a little bit of backstory as to what happened to them, where they've been, and how they ended up joining this rebellion. So that's kind of what the premise is that we're following these two sides. And in this first book especially, it is very fast-paced. There's a lot of action to it, and there is this real focus to, like, we're clearly coming to a point of convergence where all of these perspectives are going to like come to a point at, you know, of convergence at the end. So this really like propels you forward in the book. However, even so, I actually read this fairly slowly because I really wanted to like think about these characters as I was reading. I really loved the characters in this. I thought they were so interesting. I don't think that we got a lot of character depth or character development in this first book because it is pretty fast-paced and very like action-centered, but the author does a fantastic job of getting you engaged with the characters. Like, you kind of are invested in them and care about them immediately. I think the character intrigue is so good that I was so intrigued by these characters. I thought they were so interesting. I just wanted to know more, wanted to spend more time with them. I immediately was like, you know, afraid for them. You can feel like the stress of the situations that they are in. You can feel the like isolation that they are experiencing and the inner conflicts that they are dealing with. You can really feel for them immediately, even if we don't get a lot of like depth to getting to know them in this first book. There are some pieces that felt like maybe they went a little too fast, especially in like the development of the relationships, or especially the romantic relationship. I kind of went back and forth about how I felt about it, because there is a romance in this that I loved. I like both of the characters. I really love them together. I'm like very invested in it, and I really hope that, you know, everything works out for them, because I've only read the first two books. I still have one more to go, and I really loved this romance. However, like, even though I was like very invested and on board for this, it did feel like it developed a little bit quickly. But then also, I do think that the development of that romance and how quickly it happened made a lot of sense for these characters and the circumstances they were in, because they were both just such like isolated and lonely people that I think it made sense that they kind of developed this bond faster than you might expect. So there are just like a lot of, I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it. However, I am very invested in it. I liked each of the perspectives in this. I think that Leto's perspective I was a little bit less invested in than the others, but I still really enjoyed it. So I loved this first book. I gave it 5 stars. It was just so much fun, and I was like obsessed with it while I was reading it. I'm trying to get other people to read it now because I need to talk to people about this. And then after that, I read The Second Rebel. So the second book picks up like almost immediately after the end of the first book. This one is really, as the second book, dealing with some of the outcomes of some of the reveals that we had from the first book, because there are some real reveals that we get in the first book. I really like the way that this author does reveals, because they do withhold information, and yet once you get the reveal, you can definitely look back and see like all of the hints and all of the breadcrumbs, and you're like, how did I not think about that? And those are the best kind of reveals, where it doesn't, like, it surprised me, but it all made sense. Like, everything clicked once you got it. It didn't like come out of nowhere. So I really liked the way that the reveals are done in this series. Anyway, so this is kind of picking up right after the first book, dealing with some of the reveals that we got from the first book. I do think that this book had a little bit of second book syndrome, in that it definitely slows down from the first book. I think it feels like there's less momentum and less focus to this one than the first book, so it's a little bit more of a bridge, because the first one clearly had more of a like focus that it was kind of building towards. This one had less of a focus in that way, but it did really progress the plot. There were a lot of like important things that happened in this second book. I think we got more time with these characters. We got to know them more, especially as we now had more information about them and we got to spend more time with them. We understood more about the way that they think about things and their motives for stuff. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I like that there are some more perspectives in this. We get two additional perspectives in this. So now there are 4 characters that we are following. I do feel like this kind of continued a little bit of the issue that I had in the first one, of like sometimes their emotions or like their commitment to things seem like they built a little bit fast. In this case, it wasn't romantic relationships, but in their commitment to certain causes that they were getting involved in. These characters go through a lot and make some real sacrifices, and sometimes it felt like they were a little too quick to make these like really intense sacrifices, and I just would have wanted a little more build up to that, so like you understood their commitment, or a little like there are other characters who seem like they could be a real charismatic like cult leader kind of vibe, and so if they kind of leaned into that, so then I could understand how this other character got kind of like caught up in it and that's why they made these sacrifices. I just felt like I needed a little bit more of an explanation as to how they became so committed so quickly. But that being said, I think the character stakes in this book are so good and so high. Like there are high like plot stakes in general, but the character stakes, like the personal stakes for these characters are so high, and like it just, that's what made this book very stressful to read, but so good. This is another one that I read this very slowly. It took me a long time to get through this because I really wanted to like think about and like process everything that happened. I love this book. I feel like I have like highlighted a lot of its flaws in when I'm talking about the second book, but it was still great. It had a lot of the same strengths. I like Lyndon A. Lewis's writing. I like the way that they write characters and the dynamics between them, and I just think they're so great at getting you so invested in these characters so quickly. I also think this series has some really interesting like thematic things that it's doing, but it also has an interesting world with this high stakes plot, and then these really like engaging characters that I just want to know more about. I just want to spend more time with, and I'm so like immediately invested in. It's just such a great series. I have become obsessed with it. I'm going to read the 3rd book very soon, and I just hope that the 3rd second book continues to be fantastic because I am loving the series and I just want to talk about it forever. But I gave the second book 4.5 stars, so not quite as good as the first one, but still fantastic. Okay, so that is what I spent most of December reading, because I was like reading them so slowly because I was savoring them and because I was stressed out by them. Then after that, I listened to the audiobook for The Vor Game by Lois McMaster Bujold, which is part of the Vorosan Saga. This is another sci-fi series. And this series, I am always trying to figure out, how do I feel about this? And I was hoping that this book would kind of be a decider for me. Like, do I care about this series? Am I going to continue? Or is this one that's just not, that I'm not invested enough in to keep going? I don't think that this one helped me make any decisions. I think I've rated each book in this series either 3 or 3.5 stars, and I don't dislike them, I don't love them, but Lois McMaster Bujold is a author that in general I just like. I like the way that she writes characters. I also really like the audiobooks for her books and the narrator. I just feel like I can't make a decision about how I feel about this series. There are things that happen in this book that make me think maybe the next book will be the one that really hooks me, but like, I don't know. This series I just can never make a decision about. So I read this one, I'm probably going to read the next one, and either, you know, eventually I'll make a decision, or I'll just muddle my way through the entire series the entire time being like, do I like this? Do I not? But it's a 14 book series, so I gave this 3.5 stars. No decisions were made. And then the last things that I read in December were 2 graphic novels, which were Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch by Brie Paulson. These were sent to me by Kara from Wild Book Garden, so thank you very much for these. But these are just very adorable little graphic novels about our main character, Garlic. So in this, there is a witch who has created these little vegetable people to help her garden. And so our main character is Garlic, and her best friend is Carrot. And Garlic is a very anxious little garlic person. She's always worrying about something. And then one day, they find out that somebody has moved into the local castle up on the hill, and they are worried that it may be a vampire. And Garlic gets nominated by everyone else to go check out who's moved into the castle and is it a vampire, because as Garlic, she has natural protection against vampires. Of course, she doesn't want to do this, but eventually agrees to it, and it's really about Garlic, you know, facing her fears and finding her courage in order to help and protect the people around her. And it just is like so cute and so sweet. And the second one is again following Garlic as she is facing some changes in her life that she doesn't feel like she is ready for, but it is again, you know, anxious little Garlic facing her fears, finding her courage, being brave, and, you know, figuring out how to live life. And she's supported by her other vegetable friends, and they're just so adorable, and it was very fun to read and just very sweet way to end the year. So I gave both of these 4 stars. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in December. I think that it was actually a really good way to end the year. I feel like I ended on a high note with some great books, and it was a really good reading month, so I'm very happy with how my December ended. I'd love to know, how was your end of year reading? And I will talk to you soon with all of my end of year wrap up videos and my best of the year and all of that, which is I'm very excited for. So thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.